His first speech, and I ask the House to extend to them the usual courtesies. I call the member for Flynn.
Mr Deputy Speaker, it is difficult to put into words the enormous pride I feel standing here in the chamber of the House of Representatives as part of the 47th Parliament of Australia to deliver my maiden speech. It is a political milestone for me, as I have now represented my communities at all three levels of government, local, state and federal. I pledge my loyalty to the people of Flynn and earnestly thank them for putting their trust in me. I will be their champion and I will most ardently defend their future and their prosperity. In my life, I have seen many events that have changed the world, how we view things and how opinions change. I have seen many droughts, floods and fires. I have learned that Australia is a land of extremes. Yet I'm yet to see the record floods that happened in Queensland in the 1890s, 2 generations ago, and bring meaning to Dorothy McKellar's words. An opal-hearted country, a wilful lavish land. All you who have not loved her will not understand. Climate is changing, as it always has for billions of years since the dawn of time. We have geological and archaeological evidence from the past that shows us that there has been many changes in the Earth's history, from ice ages to the era of the dinosaur to the evolution of modern man. We must use our technology and look at the past to understand our history and learn from it so we can better understand our path to the future. Mr Deputy Speaker, the argument that global warming has been caused by human emissions and there is need for drastic action is based entirely on computer modelling. Climate, atmospheric and ocean temperature models over the last few decades have all been checked with actual measurements, and all of the predictions have been wrong. There have been the most outrageous claims made in recent decades about pending climate catastrophe that simply have not happened. The ice caps will melt. There will be catastrophic sea level rises. The polar bears will die. There will be tens of millions of climate refugees. We've got 90 days to save the planet, and so on. Mr Deputy Speaker, it is preposterous to suggest that computer models can predict the climate future when input data and parameters are manipulated, flawed and wrong. Rubbish in, rubbish out. If there is one universal truth, it is this. If the theory does not agree with practice, theory is wrong every time, no exceptions. Mr Deputy Speaker, last year some 25,000 world leaders and bureaucrats converged on Glasgow for the climate conference. Many nations of the world, including Australia, agreed to the proposal to reach zero net carbon emissions by 2050. Since then, Russia has invaded the Ukraine and Eastern Europe is at war. This event has exposed energy policy and national security in many EU countries as desperately lacking. Mr Deputy Speaker, Germany is arguably one of the world's most technologically advanced industrial nations on earth, who finds itself in a position where their renewable energy and emissions policy has exposed their national security. Russia now has the ability to bring Germany to its economic knees simply by turning the gas off. As a result, the German government has overturned its decision to phase out coal-fired power stations and nuclear power plants. Mr Deputy Speaker, we as a nation are proposing to phase out the coal-fired power generation sector, while the rest of the world are building and demanding more. World carbon emissions continue to rise, and we as Australians seem quite prepared to adopt energy policy and environmental policy that will lead to economic ruin and achieve and prove nothing in relation to the rest of the world. This has been clearly stated by Australia's Chief Scientist, or former Chief Scientist, Dr Alan Finkel. What Australia is trying to achieve amounts to virtually nothing. There's a proposal to build an industrial-scale green hydrogen industry at Gladstone. Hydrogen is extremely dangerous. It is extremely flammable and has specific qualities that make industrial quantities of hydrogen very difficult to produce, store, transport and use. In 1937 the Zeppelin exploded. In 1986 the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. In 2011, Fukushima, Japan nuclear reactor plant exploded. And more recently and close to home, Callide C4 coal-fired generator exploded. These are all catastrophic hydrogen explosions. Mr Deputy Speaker, you can't mine hydrogen, you have to make it. So you would need 12,300 wind turbines or equivalents to power a 3 million tonne per annum hydrogen industry. Cooper's Gap cost $850 million to build, so by my estimates there would have to be in excess of a $100 billion investment if we want to go with the wind farm scenario to generate power to make hydrogen just at Gladstone. It should be the market that should be providing the bulk of the investment to such proposals, not the government. Mr Speaker, to my fellow Australians, I say this: cabat emptor. And I will leave the House with one final thought. De omnibus, de debantem. Question everything. I commend my speech to the House.